Hey everyone, my name is Lynx Kameli, and in this week's video, I'd like to talk about something that's been on my mind recently, and that's the idea of quitting tanking to swap to DPS in Endwalker. It's an idea that's been on my mind over the past few months, as my group has been on break and I haven't been raiding since February. In this raiding break, I've leveled up all my classes to 80 and have been able to play a bunch of different classes in a bunch of different pieces of content, and have been having more and more fun on melee DPS. I've been tanking since 2017, and in those 4 years of being a full-time tank, I've never felt like swapping to another role, as I wanted to become the best tank I possibly could be. However, and I know some people absolutely hate when I bring up any of my accomplishments, but being rank 1 multiple times and getting week 1 savage clears for years on tank has led me to feel like I've achieved all that I can on tank, aside from a world first, which is kind of out of my control. I've cleared all 3 ultimates while progressing as a tank, and loved every second of it. However, after doing dozens and dozens of reclears on ultimates on tank, I've started to feel it becoming a bit repetitive, and these days when running ultimates for fun with friends, I often ask if I can DPS them. The idea of starting a new adventure on another role and trying to take that role to rank 1 and becoming very good at it is very alluring, but there's still a lot of factors that have been plaguing me with doubt. One of the biggest fears I have with swapping roles would be missing out on a great tank fight during progression. As I've said numerous times across multiple videos, my favorite thing in FF14 is progress raiding, and overcoming bosses for the very first time. I've never been a farm player, as I feel like running fights 300 times, spreadsheeting them to perfection, and fishing for critical hits to get a high parse is just not really fun for me personally. So if I were to miss out on a great tank fight in progression, I would be extremely sad, as while yes, I could do it again on tank, that feeling of doing a boss for the first time and learning the mechanics would be gone, as I would have already cleared the fight on DPS. On top of this, my YouTube channel is kind of based around tanking, with my most popular video being a tank guide, and people kind of knowing me as the tank guy. I don't know if I could make interesting videos with as much information in them on DPS as I can with tanking. I think even if I mained DPS, I could still make tanking videos, of course, but not being a tank main would definitely lessen my ability to give great tips and strategies. Tanking is a very out-of-the-class role, with tank rotations being very simple, but things like boss positioning and mitigation planning being universal for all tanks and requiring thinking beyond just your class. DPS complexity is essentially just pressing your DPS cooldowns at the right time, following your rotation, and having high damage uptime. So the fear that I couldn't maintain a high quality on my videos definitely frightens me and pushes me towards sticking with tanking. I'm sure I could do more general videos, and those have done well on my channel, with great examples being my Quit WoW for FF video and my Explaining the Meta video, but a lot of my content is focused on tanking, and losing that would potentially really hurt my channel. I'm not trying to say that I'm sticking to tanking for YouTube viewership, as at the end of the day, I am motivated by fun way more than I am by success or YouTube views, but at the same time, I like providing great information through my videos and sharing knowledge I've learned over the years of tanking that I've done. I really don't know if I could translate that sharing knowledge aspect to DPS classes. The biggest problem I have with swapping to DPS, however, is that I would probably have to find a new raid team if I were to swap. My static has 2 melee players that are very happy on melee DPS, and when I've approached them about role swapping, they've both said no and wanted to stick with melee. I don't blame them for that, as they should be able to play what they want and have played melee for years, but the reality is that if I were to move away from tanking, I would definitely have to find a new static. That causes another huge problem of my class of choice being Dragoon. If I were to swap to DPS, I would want to play Dragoon, and with Reaper coming out in Endwalker and sharing gear with Dragoon, finding a new team that has a maiming spot open and 7 players that aren't hyped for Reaper and wanting to swap would be essentially impossible. I also wouldn't want to leave my static of 3 years now, as I love my team and we're all great friends. Saying goodbye to the group I've been with for years just to play a different class would feel extremely bad. I might not even enjoy DPSing long term, and it would suck to go through all this work and risk just to find out I actually want to go back to tanking. There are so many uncertainties and potential issues that have caused making a decision to be extremely difficult. I have played melee DPS in progression before, playing Samurai in the first year of Stormblood. I enjoyed it, and definitely felt like I played well on it, but still felt like I had more to do with my tanking adventure, and so swapped back to tank pretty quickly. What I learned from that experience is that I hate positionals and feel less useful on a DPS class than I do on a tank class. When tanking, I can help out so much with mitigation, boss positioning and movement, pushing out higher DPS, and coming up with great tank cooldown lineups that make the healers feel comfortable with my damage intake. On a DPS class, the best I have is Feint, and that's about it. The best support you can do as a DPS player is to do more DPS. I think a lot of my decision hinges on the Endwalker media tour when we will see all the new skills in Endwalker and are able to see Reaper gameplay for the first time. However, the lack of confidence in making a decision is why I decided to make this video, and I wanted to bring the discussion to you guys. If you guys have ever swapped roles and loved it or regretted it, I'd love to hear from you in the comments, and maybe we can have a discussion on the impact of rerolling. It's something I haven't done in 4 years, and in that time, I've come to identify with tanking and people know me as a tank player. I'm not sure if you guys can relate, but being known for something is a great feeling. Not from a look at me, I'm so cool perspective, but just as a I fit in with this thing perspective. When my friends needed a tank for an ultimate or their tank was missing for a week of Savage, they often came to me and asked me if I could help out, and it's a great joy to be dependable in that way. To know that people seek you out for a certain activity or role. And I've come to identify with tanking. It's probably really nerdy, but I feel like a tank player. It's part of my identity and personality in a slightly cringy but real way. I care a lot about being a leader, being dependable and consistent, and supporting my team as much as possible. I even thought about getting a warrior job icon tattooed on me, but I would never get a tattoo. If you guys have ever felt this way, or have rerolled and regretted it, or loved it, I'd love to hear from you. Lastly, I'd like to touch on how different a boss can feel on a different role and how that impacts satisfaction. I've progressed raid fights on all 3 roles, and each role feels completely different from the rest. Whenever I healed, I often felt very disconnected from the bosses, as the gameplay style of focusing on health bars and keeping people topped up is kind of universal across all fights. And while yes, your healing cooldowns and rotations change from boss to boss, I often felt like healing was very samey across different fights. This is the same way I felt about ranged DPS, whether it be physical ranged or magic. Being away from the boss and not having to care about melee uptime makes me feel less engaged in a fight. This is a very personal and subjective feeling, but being in melee range makes me feel very connected to the boss, and I have more fun as a melee. However, because tank gameplay is not 100% tied to your class and instead is very role dependent, it feels very satisfying to be a great tank, on a level I don't think is comparable to DPS. Having great positioning, mitigation, and movement, as well as doing extremely high DPS, is much more satisfying for me personally than just doing max DPS on a damage class. Yes, melees can have fun with maximizing positionals and melee uptime, but in a way, tanks also have this. With caring about your melee's positionals and catering boss movement to your melees, it's almost, in a way, like you are the one doing them too. I always felt more engaged and like I had more going on when playing a tank than any other role. And again, that's very subjective, and I'm sure many of you will disagree on that. Bringing this discussion full circle though, I felt like I've done all that for many years, and the satisfaction of being a great tank is starting to wear off. I don't know what I want to do in Endwalker. I'm so conflicted, as you can tell from this video. I really hope you guys can help me make a decision, as with a few months to the expansion, I have time to truly feel out melee DPS through running Savages or Ultimates before Endwalker drops. Whatever I do, I just want to thank you guys so much for watching and coming with me on this journey. Making YouTube content for FF14 in a way has been an extension of my gameplay, and now when playing the game I often think about video ideas and getting good footage for future videos. If I do swap off tanking and slow down tank videos for more general topics or DPS focused videos, I hope you guys will stick with me, and I hope I can keep providing great videos that you all enjoy. Again, thanks so much for watching, and if you liked this video, leave a like. If you didn't, a dislike. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated with my videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.